This is Martha Alderson again, the Plot Whisperer. We are back for our series of How Do I Plot a Memoir, Novel, or Screenplay. And we've done many steps. We've passed the middle of constructing a pre-plot for your story before you actually write. So today what I wanted to talk about, because we're starting to sort of gear up for the 3/4 mark, which is the crisis, which is a huge energetic marker in the universal story that really switches the energy. Everything changes. The character is, transformed at depth because of what happens at the crisis. It's the highest energetic part in the story so far. So I thought I would just talk a little bit again about, not again, but to go in a little bit more depth about the definition of plot and then the importance of character, but not just character, but character emotion. So if you think of plot as what happens to the character in their development, their emotional development, by the dramatic action that happens in the story, when a character is changed by the dramatic action over time, and they're changed at depth, then the story becomes thematically significant. In other words, it's meaningful that the character suffers a crisis and then goes through a transformation period because of that. Now, in some of the more mass market airport books, which are very highly dramatic action driven, the characters have to be very consistent, but they're not changed by the dramatic action. And that's fine. There's still plot, there's still character, but there's not necessarily a lot of thematic significance that goes along with that, because we're not identified with the character as much as we're identified with the dramatic action. So if you think about the dramatic action is what creates excitement. That's what makes the page turn. That's what makes people sit on the edge of their seat when they see a movie. And so the dramatic action obviously is critical. The character emotional development is how the reader or the audiences identify with the movie or book that they're reading. They identify through the character. And then what they're left with at the very end is the thematic significance or the overall meaning based on, the change and everything that happens within that. But beyond just the character, that we identify with the character, we identify with how they emotionally express themselves. And one of the big problems that I see with writers, especially who are starting out, and always in the first draft of any writer, is that we have a tendency to want to tell what the character is feeling. She felt sad, she felt glad, she was upset, she was angry, or else we go through this internal monologue about what they're thinking about what happened and how they're reacting to that. What's much more powerful and much more nuanced and much more impactful for a story is when you can show the drama and show the emotion by the characters' reactions, by the word choices they make, by the things that they surround themselves by, and then by the reaction, what they do in reaction to the dramatic action. So that you want to be able to show it beyond telling it. And it's something that is acquired. Either you're really good at it and sort of right-brained, classic, big picture, creative writers can access this better, because right-brained writers are more apt to be able to see things in the bigger picture. They can stand back and sort of understand what the bigger picture is, where the more dramatic action driven writers are more left-brained often. It depends on what you start your story with, and they're much more literal. They take exactly what happens on the page and that's the literal meaning. They don't really stand back and try to make a bigger statement about it. Those people have a lot more trouble with character emotional development, and just the displays of emotion is just much more difficult. If you understand that you have strengths and weaknesses within your writing, that you're really good at certain things but you're not so good at the other, it doesn't mean that you can just rely on your strength. I mean, that's your fall too. That's your default plan is your strength. But you want to be a balanced writer because you want the story to be balanced. You want to appeal to all different kinds of readers and audiences. So you sort of want to tap into the things that aren't that easy for you and maybe read books or go to movies to sort of watch how it's done. And in movies it's a little different because the actress or actor themselves is the one that will convey the emotion, and yet still you want to be able to insert it into the screenplay by the action or the reaction that they make to what's happening to them. So we also touched a little bit about theme, and I haven't talked much about theme yet, and yet it's sort of my passion. I just love thematic significance. I love that stories, you know, you're often left with an idea of what the bigger meaning is and sort of what you take away from it and how you might change certain things in your life based on that, and that's when there's real heavy identification with the story. So what I'd like you to do now is to think about the themes that your story is going to delve into in a pre-plotting sort of idea. You know, are you going to be writing about families? Are you going to be writing about politics, history? Are you going to talk about betrayal or, you know, love or abandonment or, you know, all of those different sorts of themes that come out in this story. So for you to start to be aware of some of the themes that you're dabbling in and write those down so that you can be aware of it, and maybe once you start writing, you'll start to get a much better sense of how the themes will play out, and then once you start to rewrite and really get into the finesse of making the book perfect, is where you start to really make every single word fit the thematic significance of the overall story itself. So for this time, what I want you to do is to start thinking about emotion in characters. How do you see emotion play out in other people? When you see people that you don't know, you know, we're at this iconic restaurant in Santa Cruz County, which I think it's actually maybe SoCal or Capitola, and it's identified by this lovely moon behind me. But if you think about, say that you were here and there were people here and you were watching them, you can pretty much look at different people and know how they're feeling by their external expression, by the way that they dress, how they hold themselves, their eye contact, the way they wear their hair, all different sorts of subtle things. Those are the things to start jotting down and keeping a notebook for, because they're going to really come in handy when you're writing the actual draft of the book, once you've gone through this series and have pre-plotted your memoir, novel, or screenplay. And then the other assignment is just to start to write down themes that you're interested in. You know, what themes seem to come up in your life, and obviously whatever comes up in your life is probably going to come up on the page, because you know, we write to sort of explore our own sensibilities and what's important to us. So start to write down just different things that you think your story is going to touch on, and some of the themes that might be relevant to the piece that you're working on, and then just kind of keep those tucked away for now. So I have my book, Blockbuster Plots, Pure and Simple. In this book is a breakdown of how to actually create a plot planner, which is a whole plan for your entire manuscript. It's based on every step that we've covered so far in the series, that we're doing on YouTube. And but I haven't talked about how to put these ideas onto a plot planner, just because I haven't figured out a way that I can do that. So if you either want to go to my website, Blockbuster Plots for Writers, or my blog, The Plot Whisperer, or you know, look at the book or get any of the ebooks, these will show you how to actually create a plot planner where you then can put the things that you're working on now, sort of have this visual template. You don't need it in order to do a pre-plot, but for people like me and maybe you who benefit from a visual picture and the ability to be able to stand back from the whole thing to see the whole picture, then you may be curious to look into the plot planner or the scene tracker template to see how you can create one for yourself.